and they don't really like me. Cause I can fuck your bitch and fuck your mom and auntie.
That is crazy.
Many rappers successfully switch genres, making an album in a completely different style. A lot of these rappers have done so very successfully and have been well received. However, there are a select few that haven't, and when they failed pretty hard. So today we are going to be looking into rappers who switched genres and then failed, starting off with Lil Wayne. Also, real quickly, I just need to say something. I'm going to alter the footage so the 12-year-olds out there can understand. Just because you don't like Machine Gun Kelly does not mean he failed when he switched to his emo rock. I don't like his music either, but he pulls in crazy numbers, so please.
I won't say he failed, but it definitely was.
So now that we got that out of
shit.
the way, let's continue with the video. The year is 2009.
Rebirth was overhated.
Recently released his iconic album, The Carter.
Rebirth was way overhated.
5 studio albums into his career and had already seen a ton of success.
Because now everybody is starting to do this type of music now.
Millions of copies of his albums. He was actually putting out so much music that people criticized him, with 50 Cent saying, "A whore sleeps with whoever will pay him. So we gotta call him a whore if he'll just go with whoever pay him to be on their records." Regardless, by the time he released The Carter 3, he was a pretty big deal. But after he released it, he rose to new levels. The Carter 3 was heavily anticipated, especially because
one of the greatest rap albums of all time,
by the way. And it was also highly anticipated because one of Wayne's DJs actually leaked a lot of the original songs, leading Wayne to just release them on an EP called The Leak and remake a lot of the songs for The Carter 3. The leaks the fans heard and all of the drama surrounding the album just helped build hype for the project. So when The Carter 3 released in 2008, it was extremely successful, selling over 1 million copies.
That shit did 1 million copies the first week?
432,000 copies. The album won
Jesus
3 Grammys.
Christ.
1 for Best Rap Album, 1 for Best Rap Performance, and 1 for Best Rap Song. Critics loved the album as well, with Rolling Stone putting it on their 500 Greatest Albums of All Time list, and Billboard putting it on their Top 200 Albums of the Decade list. By 2020, The Carter 3 was certified 6 times platinum. Lil Wayne was on top of the world, with a lot of people considering him the greatest rapper at the time. So I'm sure you can imagine how much of a surprise it was to people when, after rapping his ass off for almost a decade and releasing one of the most successful albums of the 2000s, Lil Wayne followed up with a rock album. Producers Cool and Dre said that following the more experimental song Phone Home on The Carter 3, they thought that Wayne could explore different sounds, which opened up the possibility of a rock album. Wayne had foreshadowed a rock album before, as he was a huge fan of the genre, and he said in particular he really liked Nirvana. He'd also collaborated with Weezer on the song Can't Stop Partying right before the release of his rock album. Still, understandably so, people were shocked at the complete genre change that Lil Wayne did. It didn't help that Lil Wayne himself said the album was originally going to be leftover songs from the Carter 3 studio sessions. Even some of the producers that worked with him on the project, Infamous and Drew Correa, were shocked. Correa
I understand.
Said he thought he was joking, and Infamous said there were
I don't
rumors
think
Wayne was working
that
on
should have been a follow-up straight after Carter 3
on it. But that night when we worked on the track, Wayne said that he wanted lots of drums, bass, and guitars. Drew started to add organs, and Wayne said no.
Rebirth shouldn't have came right after Carter 3.
A real rock album. Lil Wayne said in an interview with Billboard, "I don't want people to think I'm trying to do something I can't do."
So I'm understanding the hate now.
On and hear me screaming and singing. He went
but
on
it was
to say
overrated,
that he has no limits on this album and that he's just having fun. So after releasing the singles Prom Queen, On Fire, and Drop the World, he released the album Rebirth in February of 2010. The only hip-hop track on the album was Drop the World with Eminem, which was a very successful song. The rest of the album, however, was received very poorly. It did alright commercially, selling 176,000 copies first week. Although I'm
going to a million, selling to a million to 100,
and they probably weren't giving it too many more spins. In comparison to his previous album's million first week sales, it wasn't great. I listened to the album and I can't say it was that good. I could see why maybe if you're a Lil Wayne fan you enjoyed it, but critics absolutely tore this album apart with tons of negative reviews from every single outlet, and to this day it's his worst reviewed album. Anthony Fantano even put it on his 15 worst albums of the 2010s list.
Lil Wayne with Rebirth, which should not have been a birth at all, really should have been an abortion.
Anthony Fantano don't like nothing.
In this infamous guitar solo from Lil Wayne. The guitar solo wasn't great.
That nigga was just trying shit.
Bro was just high, when I feel like quitting the guitar. And although this album was received very poorly and most people didn't really enjoy it, he bounced back almost immediately the next year when he released The Carter 4, selling nearly 1 million copies first week. So it's clear that after Rebirth was sandwiched in between 2 albums from his The Carter series, that Lil Wayne's attempt at rock and roll wasn't too successful. However, on the flip side, even though this album wasn't very successful, a lot of people argue that it did open doors for many artists to come. It's no secret that Lil
It
Wayne is
did.
a huge influence to
That's a
rappers
fact. It
nowadays,
literally
with popular
did.
artists like Lil Uzi Vert, who
'Cause
just
everybody is
ventured
doing
into
that type
rock on
shit
their
now.
latest album, saying that Lil Wayne is one of their biggest influences.
I learned Lil Wayne. I wanted to be Lil Wayne. I would talk when I was younger. Girls would say I look like Lil Wayne, so I would run with that.
Another artist that was influenced by Wayne
Trippy,
was Trippie
Uzi,
Redd. So
like,
just
come on
because
now.
Rebirth didn't go over so well, Wayne has inspired an entire generation of rappers who want to experiment with other genres. This is actually the argument that Complex made recently to suggest that Rebirth was a good album, although I think most people would disagree with that. And even though Rebirth didn't go over so well, Lil Wayne said himself he was just having fun, and that's all that matters at the end of the day. In 2019, Logic released his book Supermarket, which actually made him the first rapper to have a New York Times #1 best-selling book. But the issue wasn't that he dove into the genre of literature. It was the accompanying soundtrack that dove into the genres of rock and pop. In 2019, Logic wasn't in the best spot of his career. He had been under a lot of scrutiny and was going to be under even more following his next 2 projects. Logic has always been scrutinized in the rap game for his biracialness and how often he would pull inspiration from his influences. However, he still did have some talent and made some pretty good albums like Under Pressure, The Incredible True Story, and others. Logic made himself much more easy to hate after releasing the album Everybody in 2017, which contained tons of lines about his biracialness and just plenty of other fun stuff. Before releasing the album, Logic said,
album
"It's
was
about me being
so
black and white,
fucking
seeing
weird,
life
dog."
from 2 different sides." It was his most successful album and gave him his biggest song to date, 1-800.
Like, yo, he really wanted everybody to know the whole album that he was biracial. Like, he was really forcing it on motherfuckers.
A song about mental illness. But this song was also subject to much criticism for being bland despite having a good message.
I've been on the low, I've been taking my time.
Didn't help Logic's image. Then
I don't
in
want to be
2018,
alive.
after tons of people were making fun of Logic
just
for
wanna
how often he
die.
brings up being biracial, he finally snapped on the remix of Royce da 5'9" song.
That song was so
Caterpillar.
overplayed.
Halfway through his verse, all of which he just spent rapping about how he wants to be a good person and promote equality, he kind of just stops rapping and starts talking.
It's so great being a white rapper. White, everything.
Honestly,
Oh,
I
on that
feel
Royce
pretty
da
bad
Fi-
for Royce when Logic
Royce
sings
da
the song,
5'9"
because
shit.
if he put it on the song, he probably didn't want to be mean and say, no, this isn't good, but it just had to.
That shit caught me off guard.
So Royce released it, and it was terrible, and it became a huge meme. On top of that track, Logic released 2 more albums that both contain some fairly mediocre lyrics and lackluster music compared to what Logic is capable of. But in 2019, Logic would make it a million times easier to hate on him. Like I said, Logic released his book Supermarket in early 2019, and it was accompanied with a rock/pop soundtrack. The book, from what I've seen online, was alright, but the soundtrack wasn't great. To be very real with you guys, I personally didn't mind this project all that much, but critics tore Logic a new one in their reviews. As Paige Stern from WRBB Radio says, the musician's work, which is usually considered rap, takes a complete 180 as he turns over to producing post-1960s boy band love song sounds. To get an idea of the sound, he had production on 2 tracks from Mac DeMarco and explored pop rock and synth rock and all sorts of other sounds. A lot of critics said Logic couldn't sing, and they also critique how he seemingly copies artists like Mac DeMarco, Red Hot Chili Peppers, and does a lame Tribe Called Quest interpolation and a Just a Friend interpolation. On top of that, the lyrical content wasn't great. It follows this story of some guy who's in love with this girl who works at a supermarket, and it comes off pretty weird. Like on the title track where he says, "I'm a weirdo, I'm a freak, I wish I could watch you when you sleep.
What?
I knew you before you knew me, holy shit, I am a creep. I come to your job just to buy some shit I don't need." Pitchfork even said, "Supermarket is a painful journey across guitar music over the past
Sounds like
5
something what
decades
Tyler was
and
saying
makes
on
Lil
Goblin.
Wayne's Rebirth look well thought out in comparison." Rolling Stone doubled down on that sentiment, saying, "It has more in common with Lil Wayne's Rebirth and Kid Cudi's Speed and Bullet to Heaven, both disastrous rock experiments carried out by established rappers that today serve as cautionary tales." YouTube critics like Sean C. tore this album apart as well.
Keep getting album after album after album, and they've just progressively gotten worse and worse and worse until we come to 2019.
I don't watch Sean C either, but he
where
actually
dropped
spitting.
2 of the
Logic
worst
music has
albums
been
in
just
the
getting
same
worse.
year.
Anthony Fantano
It's like he had
also
them
included
like
this
good
album on
albums
his
back
worst
then,
album
and every
of the
album he just
2010s
keep putting
list.
out just
You know,
keep
some
getting
albums
worse
really
and
make
worse
you
and
sit there
worse
and
and worse.
reflect. God, what was he thinking? Just like this one. God, what was he thinking?
Supermarket peaked at number 56 on the Billboard 200 and sold about 12,000 copies first week, which is pretty poor in comparison to his previous album, Young Sinatra 4, which debuted at 2 on the Billboard charts and sold 122,000 copies first week. To be entirely fair to Logic, it was a soundtrack that was accompanying his book, so it wasn't promoted as much as a regular album would be. Following Supermarket, Logic continued to dig a deeper hole for himself in his career, especially with the release of the album Confessions of a Dangerous Mind that same year. It was regarded as one of Logic's worst albums, if not his worst. I'm pretty sure that and Supermarket are neck and neck for the title. Even with all of that hate that Confessions garnered, it still sold 80,000 copies first week, which is about 7 times more than what Supermarket sold. So it's pretty obvious that Logic's venture into rock music wasn't too successful. In January of 2011,
I'm disappointed that ever since Kid Cudi just have not been under Ye, he turned into an incredibly corny person.
Friend and collaborator Dot Genius. After a year of teasing, promo, and announcing a tour, Kid Cudi and Dot Genius released their rock album Wizard.
I actually like that album too.
2012. The album debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 charts, sold 66,000 copies first week, and debuted on both the rock album and alternative albums charts as number 1. For Kid Cudi's first venture into rock music, it was fairly successful. However, it would foreshadow something much worse. You have to remember that in 2012, when Cudi released Wizard, he was coming off of one of the biggest peaks of his career. He had worked with Kanye on 808s and Heartbreak, released his hit single Day and Night, and had also released his classic album Man on the Moon 1. He was headlining festivals, collaborating with big artists, and working with large brands. So it makes sense as to why he was able to experiment with sounds like he did on Wizard and still get support from his fans. However, by 2015, Cudi was in a rough place. 5 years prior, he released Man on the Moon 2, so fans were patiently waiting for the 3rd installment. He had been teasing it for years, but ended up releasing multiple albums before it. Cudi also said that his 2015 album, Satellite Flight: The Journey to Mother Moon, would be a prelude to the 3rd Man on the Moon album. So when he said he was going to drop yet another album before that, fans were pretty disappointed. He was also dealing with a lot of mental health issues which caused him to fall into drug use, so he made an album about it and released it in December of 2015, and that album was called Speedin' Bullet to Heaven. This album was, like Wizard, a full-on
everybody shits on.
However, unlike Wizard and a couple of songs on Satellite Flight, Speedin' Bullet to Heaven wasn't as good, wasn't well received, didn't do well commercially, and had extremely dark lyrics. Cudi himself has said that Speeding Bullet to Heaven was a cry for help. I was literally screaming out to the world that I was hurting deeply and just wanted
I didn't think the album was really that fucking bad,
though,
but like,
his screams didn't sound too good, and it was poorly reviewed by critics. Complex said, Speeding Bullet to Heaven is raw, grating, and at times unpleasant to listen to. This is for a few reasons. The music was alright, but Cudi sounded awkward on a handful of songs, and because of the terribly dark lyrics throughout the album, it was really awkward for the majority of people to listen to. Oh, and there were these really annoying Beavis and Butthead skits throughout the entire project. I get why he put it in there because it ties into his life in certain ways, but it's pretty annoying to hear frequently throughout the album. It was even weirder when Beavis didn't like the songs and a narrator had to tell him why he should like them in defense of Cudi, as if Cudi was preparing the listener to not like the songs and then having to explain to them why they should like it. Another critic for Pitchfork said, while his diehard fans await his long-delayed Man on the Moon 3, Kid Cudi opted instead to release a 90-minute double-disc rock album. Unfiltered, unpolished, and uncomfortable.
Honestly, you can hear it in the album
that he not even a noble one. And I think that is a good summary of the album. The A-side was 18 tracks, and the B-side was 8 extra tracks full of demos and outtakes, which were even worse than the main album. Also,
I like about 2 or 3 songs on this album
sucks, and the majority of his fans were not fans of this album.
Oh my god. No, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. I can't do it. This is the end of the fucking reaction video. I'm coming to my final verdict right now. I don't even need to listen to the rest of this shit.
Speedin' Bullet to Heaven.
It is like a complete opposite Kid Cudi of what you're used to hearing.
Copies first
so that's why I can see
this compared to his first rock project, Wizard. Every album he released following,
especially coming from Man on the Moon and like hearing Speedin' Bullet to Heaven.
Artists like A$AP Rocky, Erykah Badu, and Kanye West all said that they liked it, so I guess that's a good thing. And to be entirely fair to Cudi, it probably wasn't meant to be a commercial success or anything like that, since it was such a raw album coming from a real dark place. But since then, he has not done any more rock albums. albums. The weird thing about this album,
I wouldn't
is that
mind
it has
another
gained
Wizard
a
album,
small
though.
but mighty cult following over the years of people who defend this album as Cudi was being very raw and real on the project. However, those fans are in the minority.
they're coping.
Speeding Bullet to Heaven
They're
overall was a
coping.
commercial
Because I'm a
and
Cudi
critical
fan, and I'm
failure.
not
But this
about to
didn't
say
ruin
sit
Cudi's
up here and
career or
say that's his
anything, as
best
a few
fucking
years
album.
later,
That's
he would
just
drop
cap.
one of his best albums ever with Kanye West, and he would drop more great music following that. To be honest, no one in this video has ruined their careers by experimenting with other genres. All of them are still to this day successful, except for this next guy.
Yikes.
To be fair to Vanilla Ice,
Yeah, I don't think
he was
nobody had a
destined for
bigger fall
failure,
off than
whether or
Vanilla
not he
Ice in
remained intact.
music.
If you guys don't remember Vanilla Ice,
Fell off
he's
so
the guy
fucking
who
hard,
made
this nigga
Ice
started
Ice
doing
Baby.
home
Ice
shows
Ice
and
Baby
shit
was a
on
huge hit
HGT
in the
oh,
early 90s,
HGTV.
and it also generated a ton of controversy. It was one of his earliest songs,
Bro
featured
got
on his
all
debut
the way
album
back.
in 1989, so he didn't have much of a foundation for his extreme success. It was actually the first hip-hop song to reach #1 on the Billboard charts, and there was a lot of controversy surrounding the song as he did sample Queen's Under Pressure, and the song relied heavily on that sample as Vanilla Ice didn't really bring much else to the table. Queen and David Bowie weren't even credited for the sample, so it made a lot of people angry. For a brief period of time, he even tried denying the fact that it was a sample.
We sampled them from him, but it's not the same bass line. Like it goes ding 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 diggy ding ding. Ding 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 diggy ding ding.
Nigga,
Ding, ding, ding.
nigga.
That's the way theirs goes.
Nigga.
Ours goes ding 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 diggy ding ding.
Nigga.
Ding 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 diggy ding.
No.
However, it was catchy
No.
and commercially appealing,
No.
so he did get
That's
a lot
not-
of attention.
it's
Vanilla
still a
Ice
sample,
followed up
my
the
nigga.
success of Ice Ice Baby with his major
Nigga,
label
y'all
debut
is
album to
stupid.
the extreme. It became the fastest selling hip hop album of all time, spent 16 weeks at #1 on the Billboard.
Just because
200,
you
and
slightly
sold over 10
change something
million
in the
copies.
sample doesn't
Vanilla
make it
Ice's
not a
success
sample
out of the
anymore.
gate
What
was
type of
crazy,
shit?
But there were a lot of underlying issues. A lot of people saw Vanilla Ice as more of a novelty act rather than an actual rapper. Eminem even
Yeah,
said
bro
that
was a
when he
gimmick
first heard
rapper.
Ice Ice Baby, he didn't want to rap anymore. A lot of rap fans also probably felt like he was a fraud, as he was seeing all of the success as a mediocre
Vanilla Ice was
rapper,
definitely
likely
a
viewing
gimmick
him as
fucking
a
rapper.
culture vulture. People grew tired of Vanilla Ice quickly, and plenty of people already didn't like him, so he began to fall off. The next album he released was Mind Blowin', which absolutely flopped compared to his last album. It didn't chart, and it only sold 42,000 copies. Vanilla Ice himself even blamed this on the fact that he went too mainstream, doing movies and making poppier songs rather than his more underground style of rap. Regardless, he was in a rough spot. It's possible that Vanilla Ice thought he could find a new fan base in a new genre, so he attempted to make a metal album. He teamed up with the producer Ross Robinson, who had worked with bands like Korn, Slipknot, and Limp Bizkit, and they began working on a
It's funny to me when white rappers is not doing well and rap, they fall all the way back and go to rock. they gotta go back to their roots and shit. Like, yeah, this rapping shit ain't working no more. God damn.
metal album. A lot of people were very surprised he was doing this, understandably so. Some people probably weren't aware that he was also a member of the band Pickin' Scabs for a brief period of time, but it didn't work out too well, so he left. Anyways, Vanilla Ice and Ross Robinson kept working and released the album Hard to Swallow in October of 1998. It was influenced by a very dark period in his life that involved
it's like,
heavy
bro,
drug
you should have
use,
just been
similar
doing
to
that
Kid Cudi's
in the
Speeding
first
Bullet to
place.
Heaven. Also, like Cudi,
That's
he
what you really wanted to do.
himself in a way that he didn't think he couldn't rap, so he made a rock album. I've listened to the album and I don't think it was that great. His vocals were okay on some of the songs and some of the music was solid, but it seemed like no one was interested in even checking out a Vanilla Ice new metal album. The album failed to chart and sold a few more copies than his previous flop, but nothing noteworthy. Critics didn't like the album either, with it landing on a couple worst album of all time lists and on the AV Club's list of the least essential albums of the 90s. The most successful song on this album was Too Cold, which was just
It was a white
rock
rapper
remake
from
of his
Philly
song
named
Ice
Zero.
Ice
He did
Baby.
that
After
shit.
this,
I
he
actually
was
thought he
dropped
was
from
a
his
nice
label,
ass rapper.
didn't
Bro
work with
had
Robinson
bars.
again, and the
But
greater
that rapping
American
shit was
community
not
stayed
working
away
out.
from him. But it
All of a
wasn't
sudden, this nigga
complete
just
failure. My theory is
just
that he
randomly
wanted a
started
new
doing
fan
rock.
base
I'm like,
proved
bro,
to be
what
true, and it
happened?
did work a
What
little bit. He was
happened?
able to go tour and get a
Bro
slightly
does not
different
rap
fan base,
anymore
although it
at
was
all.
still pretty
Just
small.
all rock
Vanilla
now.
Ice
He
even
completely
said, "Now my
changes his
crowd
shit."
is the body piercing and tattoo crowd." So to be honest, in my opinion, I don't think that the failure of this album was really because of the quality of the music. I think it was more so just because people didn't care about Vanilla Ice anymore. In 2001, he tried another rap rock album called Bipolar, which again flopped and was mocked by critics. A sales rep for Sony even said that the sales for Bipolar were not bad for Vanilla Ice. The most success that Vanilla Ice has seen after Ice Ice Baby is getting a stand named after him in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. It's like the third thing that pops up on Google when you type his name in. So like everyone else on this list,
that's the only thing he's good for is a fucking a JoJo
yeah,
reference.
I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, please make sure to leave a like down below. I had to listen to all of these bad albums. They weren't good. So because I put myself through that, I think I deserve a like. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.